Hello to our beautiful community and welcome to Light the Torch. I will be your host, Ella, and today we are diving into a powerful blend of fantasy, ancestry, and first emotional truth. Our guest is author Kristina Serrano, whose novel Slow Echoes takes us on a genre defining journey through cultural memory, supernatural danger, and the spaces where identity is both inherited and discovered. And at the center of the story is Selk, a character layered and vivid as the world she navigates, with Egyptian, Croatian, and American roots. Selk's journey spans both real and alternate worlds. And today we get to explore that journey with Christina herself. So, Christina, welcome to Light the Torch.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
It's truly a pleasure to have you here. And well, today we will have a little conversation, and I will be asking you some questions so you can share something about the book. So, I want to start saying that the story is so vivid and layered. And I don't know if you can tell us what inspired the Slow Echoes. Was there a specific moment or spark that gave birth to Selk's journey?
Yeah, so it was right after I had just graduated from UNCW. I had just gotten my degree in fiction and a certificate in publishing. So I've always been heavily immersed in writing. But yeah, I was wanting to write a story about boxing and also a story featuring Egyptology, and I couldn't decide on which one to write. So I'm like, why not just combine both themes? So that's when was born. And of course, I can't write anything without romance.
That's so interesting. And as you mentioned about Egyptian culture, the book blends Croatian, Egyptian, and American cultures. But how did your own background or research shape Selk's identity?
Well, I was actually before creative writing, I was always interested in things ending in ology, like Egyptology, cosmology, archaeology. I was going to actually major in geology before switching my major to creative writing once I found out that required too much math. So, yeah, it's just I've always been fascinated in exploring ancient civilizations and yeah, just kind of seeing how I can put my own spin on things.
I think that's amazing because you can tell that from the book, from all the information and the passion that you talk about. And Silk is such let's say multidimensional character. But how would you describe who she is at the start of the novel and then who she becomes by the end?
Hmm, good question. Yeah, I think at the beginning she's just kind of more happy-go-lucky, like just going through life. She has her routine. She loves going to the gym. She's very active, which is very unlike myself. I'm not I'm not very active like she is. But yeah, I think just anyone learning about their roots, their ancestry is life-changing and not to spoil too much, but everything she almost loses that that definitely changes her by the end.
Yes, and she lives a lot of things, and I think one of the central points is her relationship with her late grandfather, and also her mother, because that seems central to her identity. And how do these relationships shape her choices throughout the story?
Well, now that you asked that, yeah, she didn't really grow up with much family, so um again, not to spoil too much because that's a spoiler, but when she does find out more about her ancestral roots, even though she's initially terrified at the task she has to face, I think subconsciously even that may have made her more willing to embrace what lay ahead, even though it was full of danger. Because even though it was a huge risk, yeah, that probably made her more willing to embrace her ancestry so she can have a semblance of, that family background since she didn't grow up with much.
That's really interesting, and also it's like this that makes her such a complex character. But I want to ask you, like, what challenges did you face in writing a protagonist who straddles not only multiple cultures but also multiple worlds, like literal and metaphorical?
Oh, well, I've always loved writing about alternate dimensions, making all kinds of notes and how that correlates with the plot. But actually, rather than the worlds, the challenge was more of a technical issue because when I first started writing it, I actually lost the first several chapters and I cried so hard because my laptop crashed, and it actually took me quite a few months to get the inspiration to work on it again. So I had lost, I think, most of my notes, the first few chapters I had written, and then I finally decided to start it all over from scratch. And then I reached a point where I just couldn't wait to get to the next chapter, every time I finished. And it's divided into sites once they get to the actual alternate dimension. So I'm like, okay, this is the next site. I'm so excited. I want to get to this site and this site.
I think that's really like interesting because it's a different way to approach the creative process because like you had this and you were excited to write something that you already wrote. I think it's interesting and it sums up to the book. And well, now that we're talking about, so boxing and kickboxing aren't just activities in this book, as you mentioned. All of the elements that you wrote have like their meaning, and this in particular seemed to hold real emotional weight. So what do these combat forms symbolize in South's life?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, the the boxing and kickboxing was probably a necessity for the story because of what she has to go through when she finally gets to post world, the alternate dimension. But yeah, it was just, I think it was where she found a sense of community. She goes to the gym, sees familiar faces every day, so I think that provided a bit of comfort and stability for her growing up. But it was also meaningful for me personally because I grew up watching boxing and well, not kickboxing, but boxing matches with my own grandfather, who meant a lot to me.
That's really interesting. And I like to know about the stories behind the decisions. For example, why is she doing that? Why is she living there? And I'm curious about the alternate Egypt. Crocodiles and venom, stained glass labyrinths, mummies that slow your very speech. How did you dream up this world?
So whenever I write, I've always primarily written paranormal and fantasy. Usually, whenever I begin a fantasy paranormal book, I'm thinking, okay, what can I take that is relevant, but that also doesn't make sense, and how can I blend this together to form something new? So yeah, I've always liked to push boundaries that way and see what I can combine together that someone wouldn't ordinarily think of combining, like you say, the crocodile creatures, and there are a few other things that I kind of turned on its head because, like, um, yeah, one of the descriptors I use for the book is that it is based on Egyptology history, but a big portion of the book is kind of turning history upside down and kind of having to relearn history in this new paranormal aspect.
Okay, that's great to know. And now, before we go on, I just want to like take a moment to celebrate what your book is doing. Not just as a fantasy novel, but as a mirror for so many readers who straddle different cultures, expectations, and worlds. So I think, Christina, I want to thank you for writing something so fresh and so courageous.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the compliment.
No, thank you for being here. And now that we're talking about the impact of your book, what do you hope readers, especially those with blended or multicultural identities, take away from Slow Echoes?
Well, I hope I hope first and foremost it sets a good example of love. That's what I always like to try to incorporate in my stories: love and compassion, and Selkin Whistler, her love and interest. In particular, I feel like they have a good example of a healthy relationship that shows how to respect boundaries, how to be respectful and not push each other and not hold each other back, and just kind of work together and support each other like that.
That's so nice. Thank you, Christina. And now, this like more to know a little bit. What do you think if you could explore one room in the alternate Egypt? Which would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, that's kind of a paradox because my favorite chapter to write was probably the least physical place I would want to be in. My favorite chapter to write was the title chapter, Slow Echoes, which featured the mummy chase, but also that would probably be the most terrifying place to be in. Um, prob- Probably the most beautiful sight that I would love to just be there and see was the stained glass labyrinth, I believe was the last site that they entered. And I just had so much fun visualizing that. I just thought it would be so pretty to see something that massive and immersive in person.
I like that answer. Like, I like the way you say that something was like really scary, but you had fun like visualizing it. It's so. And well, Christina, thank you so much for being here and for giving us slow echoes. I think the story has so many layers. It has hard hit heritage, and I know it's going to stay with readers long after they turn the last page. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed talking to you.
It was so nice. And now to everyone watching, you should know that Slow Echoes is available now. So go read it, share it, and let it remind you that our roots, even when tangled, are the beginning of something powerful. So until next time, keep your light lit and your voice true, and see you at the next Light the Torch. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.